What's up, everybody? It's the Dogger Pass Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Tom. My co-host, of course, at Madlab Mike. We're here to break down another excellent show for you. Of course, we got our producer, Jared, in the background. I want to make sure to give him a special shout out. I forgot to shout him out, and another shout out that I'll get to here in a second. But it is really nice to be on a show with an actual producer. So it does feel blasphemous not to shout out our guy Jared. And Jared, you know, we're gonna find out more about him, maybe what his favorite fighter is or other things, and maybe we can get him to kind of chime in here. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Also, you forgot one already. Dayton, the Phantom in the room. We got to announce him too. So we got Dayton and Jared. When you said Jared, you said Jared and Jared, almost like it was a law firm.
That's right. Yeah, Jared and Jared. Yeah, the Phantom Menace, the Phantom Edit. Perhaps we'll see. But we got support in the rear. Easy phrasing there. And we got, you know, a big card that we just put behind us, and another card to look forward to. But real quick, because there really is no segue to this, but I did want to mention it. Someone mentioned in the comments, and I did mean to mention it amongst other things like that I forgot to shout out, like the Jared shout out. But we have a pretty large Canadian audience. We have a large hardcore audience, not just a gambling audience, right? Like some of the gamblers we forget maybe came in not even in the Connor era. They came in like post pandemic, right? But this podcast has a lot of long hardcore fans, and they're familiar with the name Jordan Breen. And we actually had that name mentioned in our comments. Mike, I don't know if you knew Jordan or close to him at all, but you've been around for a while. So I imagine, you know, you at least knew the name. I didn't know him too personally. We did follow each other. And I remember like when he gave me a follow, I was like, whoa, dude, that's like, I'm not a big, you know, oh, I want to get a picture with this person. Oh, I got a follow by this person. But I was like, wow, this dude is like one of the smartest guys I've ever heard speak about the sport. He is one of the, you know, knowledge bases and stuff. And I'm like, he's the guy where it's like, man, I feel like a fraud, you know, up next to almost. So to get kind of, you know, his approval or whatever was just like the world in any form. And he faded out from the scene. Obviously, he's had his own personal struggles and has since passed away. But I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention a big contributor to this scene, a big, you know, path paver for people like myself and yourself, Mike, I would argue. Anything you want to add in here, Mike?
Yeah, you know, you don't have to know somebody to respect somebody, you know, especially in whatever space that you're in. I mean, you could be an engineer and respect an engineer from SpaceX. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to know that. I personally did not know him. I knew of him from being in the field for so long, being in the industry for so long. And there's certain guys that literally just, not that they pioneer the way, but they do things a little bit better. You know, they do things a little bit better. They add a little bit more nuance. They add a little bit more detail. They're a little bit more diving. And he was one of those guys. Like, he was one of those guys. So I have I had a lot of respect for him. I still do. Terrible tragedy that happened for sure.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to mention that before we push on. But it was I would dare say it was a good week. It was, you know, we did well. I believe, the Dogger Pass Parlay, which, by the way, we took some comments. We're going to adjust it. We're going to do a 4-legger. All right. Just a favorite and a dog from me and a favorite and a dog from Mike. We're going to have that for you at the end of the show. But we had Spivak inside the distance, which missed. We had the mix and Bautista over, which hit, and Merab, which hit. But I want to give a shout out. It was first of all, again, it was good results for both me and Mike. So hopefully you're following us both. And, we didn't do you wrong last weekend. That's for sure. And also I wanted to shout out Mike. He had a really good, great call. Not just getting it right. There's getting it right, but there's like stuff that I pop for is like, the freaking nerdy hipster analyst or whatever you want to call me, like totally guilty. And I love it when people can give the reasoning. And Mike didn't just give you a right pick, a correct dog, but he laid out the reasonings, and it's something that a lot of the nerds like myself will nerd out for. But Mike was the one that called it out, and astutely so. And it was the footwork in that patchy mix versus Mario Bautista fight. So Mike, I just want to say props. And again, in my defense, even though I admittedly reluctantly picked mix, I did say pump the brakes if you're looking to lay the chalk on. I think if you're a mix backer, maybe look for the over instead if you're not, feeling bullish like Mike was. But Mike, you nailed it, bro.
Yeah, man, it was that was good. I mean, listen, I gotta be honest, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna sit here and pound my chest and be like I told you, even though I did. No, I'm just kidding. But the thing with that fight is I actually expect Patchy to show a little bit more than he actually did. Like when I looked at that fight and I saw everybody all over him, I was like, this is the path. Like the path is he's got zero footwork, he doesn't take his head off the center line, he doesn't adjust. Like Batista has a clear path here. But I thought he would actually fight a little bit better. Like it actually, it's almost like the downfalls that he did have were magnified because it was almost like he didn't show up as well. Like that wasn't the best Patchy mix we saw in the cage on Saturday night. And I think it was a culmination of things. I think it was the bright lights. I think it was also, you can't compare. I told you guys, you can't compare the level of competition from Bellator and PFL to the UFC. It's a completely different animal. And then the biggest part of it was the footwork. Like he's got no footwork. And if you don't have any footwork, you're at a clear deficit. So I'm actually proud of that one. But like I said, I actually thought Patchy was going to give a little bit more resistance. I mean, I was sitting back on my couch saying we got this one in the bag after the first round, and I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to kind of be a little bit of a nail biter until the end.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mike, because I didn't want to mention it too much because it might come off as cope for me with between bias or my pick or whatever. But yeah, I expected him for at least to do takedowns, maybe get that first round and have Bautista survive, and then it essentially comes down to a 1-round fight, right? With maybe round 2 being the swing round. But we didn't see a lot of that from Mix. Of course, Kayla Harrison. We won't spend too much time on this, folks. We really want to push to the card this weekend, but of course, Kayla Harrison in the main event, right? She got the submission. Got one of the legs of the round robin home. Co-main, that's right. One of the legs of the round robin home, but didn't make it there, but it was still profited overall. And then, of course, we both felt very bullish, of course, about Maraba as well in the main event, and he came through. I mean, he looked like a minus 1,000, Marab did he not, Mike?
Yeah, he did. I just want to say one thing because there was one comment, there was a couple comments, and you guys twist my stuff out of context a little bit. There were people coming at me a little bit saying, this guy says that Pfeiffer's not good. This guy says Pfeiffer's overrated. Well, what do you think now? I mean, what kind of fight was that? That was a fight not to lose. That was not a fight to win. And if there was maybe a couple more rounds in that fight could have got dicey. So heed what I say. Don't sit there and take everything that I say because I say someone's overrated. Doesn't mean I mean they're not good. It just means I think they have a little bit more hype on them than they deserve. And he showed that on Saturday night, that he is a little bit more hyped up than he deserves to be.
Yeah, and that happens. And again, it's part of the thing we we're kind of warning you folks about, like the UFC is putting together matchups that don't necessarily make sense, that shouldn't happen, whether it's deserving, whether it's a skills thing or whether it's a health thing. What we saw with the Barber and Blanchfield, right? They attempted to still go forward with that. So I've been a little extra, jumpy on the weigh-in scale subsequently. Like last week, I adjusted one play, which I didn't need to. Like I just had a lot of exposure on Azmat Mirzakana, for example. And I switched one of the legs out with Kong, and it didn't really matter. They both hit, but I was a little scared from what I was seeing on the scales because of what we've been talking about. Nevertheless, it was a good card. I would say also overperformed as well as a card. I know I can be hard on the quality level of UFC, but I feel like last weekend's card overperformed, and we got a good card out of it. So we got another card on the road here, UFC Atlanta. And of course, we know, again, even those of us who, can be critical. I don't even see being critical. I just see it, calling the sky blue when it's blue. But sticking to that, energy, we got to give credit. The UFC will try much harder with their fight slates when we go to live crowds. So that's why I love these live shows, right? Because again, the matchmakers will try a little harder. And this is some good, I want to say good matchups. I think there's some potential fun and entertaining fights, right? Top to bottom, Mike. But we'll talk about it. But I think the theme here, instead of UFC Atlanta, it should be called UFC Landmine. Are you picking up what I'm putting down here, the landmine talk? Feels like there's a lot of landmines on this card.
I created a little narrative myself. I think it's also a card of athleticism. I think there's a lot of athleticism that can play into the hands of certain fighters. And it's a test for guys that may be a little bit more technical, but not as athletic anymore. So there's a narrative there too.
Yeah, that's always a good one. And it's prevalent in a lot more matchups than we realize. So let's start from the top. Of course, this fight is headlined by Kamaru Usman, who is your plus 230 dog. He's facing Joaquin Buckley, who's on a 6-fight winning streak since dropping down to welterweight. Minus 280 favorite for Joaquin Buckley. Total for a main event where you'd expect it for the most part, 4.5 rounds. The over 4.5 rounds plus 100, under 4.5 rounds minus 130. So, Mike, before I kick it off to you, I'll say this was a fight, and I feel like this is the case for a lot of the fights and will be the case for the fights that I haven't quite gotten my full tape study in yet, where you come in looking in one direction, right? And you go through your tapes, you do your little process or whatever. And sometimes, and I always say that's why it's important to do your due diligence, because sometimes you leave looking the other way. I don't know if this is the case for you. I don't know if you even had that on this card at all, Mike, but this was the case for me in this fight. So I'm curious, where did you end up for the main event?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. This was very tough for me for a whole different sets of reasons. It's just when I do my breakdowns, there's certain things that I like more than others. It's almost like judges. Some judges like grappling, some judges like striking. So there's certain really important things that I categorize. One thing is athleticism. Another thing is obviously wear and tear and age and genetic somatotypes and stuff like that. So if you look at the way, if you break this down, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I don't want to drag it down, but if you break them down from bullet to bullet, both of these guys have very stellar pillars of what I like to see, but they also don't have certain things that I don't like to see. So now it makes you a little bit confused. You're like, all right, where do we go from here? So when I talk about Kamaru Usman, this is a guy who I mean, at one point in time, I mean, Dan, you could vouch for this when you break this down, is we were calling him the greatest welterweight of all time. Like at one time, everyone's like, he's the greatest welterweight of all time. It's hard to deny. Even Dana White was saying it. It's hard to deny. He was just running through people. A guy who had really good wrestling, really good cardio, really good conditioning, great genetic somatotype for fighting. And then he all of a sudden, he's gotten hands. He started working his jab well, started understanding how to hunt people down without over hunting. And he became this creature that seemed like he was unbeatable. Then he fights Leon Edwards, and obviously we saw what happened there, right? He goes into that fight, he's beating him from pillar to post, and he gets caught with a nasty head kick done. He comes back, he loses. Then he comes back on short notice and he fights Chimaev, and everyone's like, this is going to be a train wreck. Like, this is literally, why would he take this short notice? He lost, but he fought really well. He fought really, really well in that fight. I have to say, I was very surprised in how well he actually did fight in that fight. And you say to yourself, when you get to a certain age, I don't know about you, but for me, when you get to a certain age, recovery and rest is so important. When I was in my 20s, I can go out and I could literally be in the gym and I could, tear my ankle up or tear my wrist up, and I'll go home and within 48 hours, I'm starting to feel good. I can hit the bag again. Now, if I get hurt, it's like, it takes me a week to recover. It takes me a week and a half to recover. So there's something to be said about when you get to Kamaru's age where recovery and rest is so important. Where the little things that he's had, I don't know if you guys heard this, but there was points in time where people said his knees were so bad that he had to walk on cushioned surfaces when he was flat-footed because his knees were so bad. Like, these are all things that people were talking about. His knees are shot. So how much rest and recovery is that going to help him? It's going to help him for certain things, his shoulder injuries, his elbow injuries, little kinky wrist injuries, but is it going to help it for his knees where you need explosion to wrestle? Maybe that's why he stopped wrestling so much. A lot of people think is because he doesn't have that explosion anymore. But at the end of the day, he's still an extremely high cage IQ fighter. He understands how to work behind the jab. He understands how to kind of work around his injuries and the things that he feels like he can't do anymore. The other side, you'll see Joaquin Buckley. This is a guy who's a very good athlete, had kind of an up and down resume coming into the UFC, and has come into his own. Very explosive, very big power. He showed he has wrestling. He's no dummy. The guy's he's got pretty good cage IQ for making blueprints to whatever opposition that he's facing. It's a couple of his fights he got a little lucky in, you know what I mean, where he was fortunate for finding the right mark, but that's a point of the game. But what I keep looking back in this fight, when you look at the odds, the odds are too inflated. I mean, they're way too inflated for somebody. Just a couple of years ago, we were calling the greatest welterweight of all time against a kid who's never been 5 rounds. Kamaru Usman has went 5 rounds 6 to 7 times in his last 10 fights. He lives in 5 rounds. So that's my biggest question mark. The question marks on Usman's health and his and stuff is a little bit of a concern, but he has a full camp here. My question marks are more on the Buckley side. Is his gas tank going to be there in the 4th and 5th round? What is he going to look like in the championship rounds against one of the greatest welterweights we've ever seen? So for the value, I just think there's way too much value on Usman, and there's no value on Buckley with all his question marks. So, for that reason alone, I'm going with Usman.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I, was going into this fight and just typical, and this is the passing of the guard. We know how the combat sports work, with age, we know how it is. The young guy takes the older guy, you know, and that's kind of what they set up. And that obviously doesn't always happen. And we can't always predict when the bottom is going to fall out. You know, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, you know, perhaps we'll talk about it when we get down to a 40-year-old fighting where you're like down on this card, where you're like, oh, maybe he'll show up and be 40 years old. It's like, well, we've been talking about that for Usman for a while. Like, as much as the good things that we've said, which are absolutely true, like we've been talking about him showing his age, his knee injuries, and all these things. And part of me combats that and goes like, dude, he's been having bad knees. And even during his air quote prime championship run, he was injured all to hell. Even before that, you know, I could share a little more now, and I don't think it's too out of school. He's past these injuries, but there was points where everyone talks about his knees and stuff. He was actually, you know, my catch wrestling coach worked with him for a little bit down there in the Killcliff Sanford days. Neil Melanson was saying like he would wear like almost like a girdle. He was having some sternum and chest issues and rib issues, and had to wear like almost like a like you know, like you'd see like women in a certain Renaissance period wearing like those tight, you know, for your chest and your sternum support just to move around. And he still made his championship run then, so it almost is a little unfair to be like, oh yeah, you know, but Buckley could beat him because Usman's knees. It's like, well, Usman's knees have always kind of been in the picture, you know.
Yep.
He's always been kind of falling apart. And even if you look at him, and you talk about athleticism, and you know, on paper, whether it's age or watching how they move, it's like, oh, Buckley's the more explosive mover, right? He's an athletic, explosive mover. And we'll talk about some of those movements and how sometimes his linear explosions can almost get him into trouble. It can run him into as much trouble as it can get him out of sometimes. And you look at Usman though, and you're like, well, he's still very athletic. I mean, that's kind of the only way he's been able to overcome a lot of these injuries and obstacles. And you go back and even watch his like, okay, let's watch when maybe he was less injured or whatever. You go back to his Division II college days. Dude, he still looks like he's moving the same. He still looks like he's moving injured. He's completing takedowns that like, and this is kind of what he was known for. Like he would finish, you know, he wasn't like a lights out wrestler or anything like with this insane record, like, you know, shout out and prayers out to Ben Askren. Right. But, you know, he would lose matches. Usman did. He wasn't Division I. He wasn't a Hodge winner. Right. This guy was a Division II national champ. But the reason why he got there, he was able to complete takedowns like from positions you weren't kind of supposed to complete. He always had that freakish ability. However, what made him great, you know, regardless of how great you rated him, he was great, is great. And what made him that way was because he always made high percentage choices, whether it was on the feet or on the floor. And I know, you know, training footage and all that stuff can't tell you everything. That being said, you go look at his training footage and man, he's shooting reactionary doubles and all these things just fine to me, which is great, you know, for a guy that's going to be exploding in and out on you. That's one thing he opens himself up to, Buckley, you know, whether it's kicks, counter punches, or takedowns. We've seen that explosive in and out movement, you know, kind of work against Buckley that way. And even though Buckley will get a little better about kind of, you know, doing something a southpaws like to do, Dustin Poirier popularized it, where, you know, you'll shift through and step through your power side of your left to end up in an orthodox stance, and it sets up a nice right hand. It also takes you off to the weak side angle of your orthodox opposition. Buckley's been a bit smarter incorporating that kind of footwork. But again, you know, Mike, I'm sure you pick up what I'm putting down here. We just talked about your footwork radar. I'm sure you've seen the problems throughout Buckley's career, and as impressive as some of the stuff he does athletically, it's very linear. It's in the same lines. And as you know, moving in straight lines in or out, especially both, can be very, very dangerous. Usman, some stats for you guys and the folks at home. You know, I'm going to come with you guys with the southpaw stats. Kamaru Usman 6-2 against UFC level southpaws. Of course, those 2 defeats to the same man, Leon Edwards, in a fight he was winning until he wasn't, of course. And even though I felt like it was a clear decision for Leon Edwards, it was a very competitive fight. That second one, Kamaru Usman was in a weird headspace, right? This 3-fight losing streak is very deceptive. And then you go to that the Khamzat Chimaev fight on short notice, when again you're expecting all the injuries, all the age to catch up with Kamaru, and he arguably wins that fight. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a big 10-8 guy, more than the judges are, Mike. And that should have been a 10-8 first, even though the damage was not strong. It was dominant enough, duration, control, all that stuff, right? Enough percentage of the 3Ds. And then I've got Usman with his jab winning rounds 2 and 3. And that's it. Comes out Chimaev, the guy fighting for the middleweight title. And I think that jab is going to be a problem because Buckley, some more stats for you guys. Buckley, he may have scored knockdowns or stoppages in 5 of his last 6 fights, which is impressive. However, if you look at it, takedowns are kind of a part of his game. Like, he's arguably just as dependent on takedowns as a Kamaru Usman would be. Even though they're different stylistically, if you really go back and look at Buckley's game, he's been spamming takedowns for a while. It's not a new trend. It's been much more in the latter half of his UFC career, but he's been doing it for a while. It's very dependent on his style because when he gets uncomfortable, his striking is not that depthly layered, even though he's explosive. And I agree that he maybe should be slightly favored, and he definitely should be slightly favored as far as the fighter more likely to get a finish. You know, I would give Buckley a slight percentage favor there. That being said, let's not pretend that he is not finishable, right? He's not Johnny Walker level of a glass cannon, but he's very hurtable. He's been hurt in a lot of his fights. And if you look at it, a lot of the fights that have given him trouble are the fights where fighters jab, win or lose, where they jab. And if you look at the fights where Buckley didn't score takedowns. Now, some of these he didn't have a chance to shoot him, whether he knocked the guy out early like a Jordan Wright, or he got knocked out early like an Alessio Di Chirico, right? Some of these fights he didn't have a chance to shoot. Some of the fights he shot and couldn't get takedowns, okay? So I went through the stats, and Mike, all the fights that Buckley can't get takedowns in, he's 4-4 in those fights. And if you break down the 4 he won, they're 4 that he should have won. They're the Jordan Wrights of the world. They're these low-level wins, or it's Vicente Luque, who I respect, but that again, I'm the last guy to use the Q word, but that was the biggest quit job in a fight. It was terrible, and we've seen where Luque has gone since, and that's his most impressive win of the 4-4, the 500 record that Buckley has when he can't get a takedown. And Usman, up until that Khamzat fight on short notice, mind you, against a giant Khamzat Chimaev, he only was taken down in one fight. The guy's got immaculate takedown defense, even with his bad knees. So Buckley, on paper, it's a 50. It's a 5. It should be lined closer to a pick'em in my eyes. Buckley in these matchups on paper, you know, that 4-4 record, he's already kind of 500 in these fights. And irregardless of who he's fighting, tell me what Buckley matchup you'd be confident laying 3-1, near 3-1 chalk on him, Mike.
None, unless it's, like I said, under top 15 guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's about it. I'm not a big Buckley guy. I'm a big technical guy. I like my technicalities. So I'm not, you know, it's fine to have that knockout blessing, knockout power, and the athleticism and stuff like that. But you need to show me more. Like, you need to show me you can go through the championship rounds. You need to show me you have 5-round gas tank. Even if you don't fight 5 rounds, I need to know you have a 5-round gas tank. You know, so he hasn't shown me enough yet for me to get behind him like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we ended up on the same side as this one, and I occasionally I got to this fight, taped it early enough, Mike, where I didn't look at the market line, and I lined it myself, and I'm like, they're gonna make Buckley probably the -150, -175 favorite, and he's gonna get bet, you know, all the way past north 2-1. The question is does the market make Kamaru a 2-1 dog or over? If that's the case, I got a fire. I saw him here at +230 over at BOL. And I have to fire on that 1 unit, +230. And here's what I did, Mike, as well, because I think that, again, I'm picking Usman officially by inside the distance, by the way. So you're getting equity on that. But as a potential hedge or potential bonus, because, again, Buckley can be hurt. Usman said he's going for the finish. I know interviews, words, talk is cheap, all that, you know, but it is very possible in this fight. They had the under 4.5 at -130. And again, 4.5 totals. I'm not a big fan of unders, even though I cashed an under. I missed an under last week, but I also cashed an under. I will say, though, when you get under 4.5 rounds, technically that's the longest the books are going to give you in MMA. That's the longest you're going to have in an MMA fight to score it under, right? And -130, I think, is a good number. And in conjunction with the +230, basically I laid 1 unit on +230. And then what I did was I put 1.3 units for just a 1 unit return on that under, because I think if Usman loses, he probably gets caught by something more often than not. I think it's the hardest outcome to imagine. Not that it's not possible, of course, but is Buckley winning by a decision. That has to be such a crazy fight for that to happen. And you're going to be puckering your butt cheeks if you're a Buckley backer. So I feel like at least one of those got a hit, Mike. In a perfect world, we hit both. And if it goes to the decision and I lose that, I lose my 1.3, I still end up with profit, because Usman probably going to be looking pretty if it goes all the way more often than not than Buckley. So Any thoughts on that before we move on?
We're on the same side. I like everything that you said.
All right, this next one, back to the land, and not that there's no landmines in the main, but back to the landmines here. Rose Namajunas in the co-main event, minus 255. Miranda, Fear the Maverick. We got two Mavericks on this card. We'll get to the second one later. Miranda Maverick, though, plus 205. Total set for 2.5 rounds. Boy, they are really fortified. They don't want us to climb the castle walls here, Mike. They got the over 2.5 rounds set at minus 500. They don't want that parlay piece madness coming through their house. The under 2.5 rounds set at plus 340. What do you got on this one, Mike?
Yeah, this is a fight where it's interesting, right? Because when you take both of these women and you put them in a cage together and you look at what they do good and what they do bad, Rose doesn't really do that many things wrong. A lot of people don't understand that these women used to train together. They're very well aware. They very know what their tendencies are. They know what their mind is thinking, what they want to do, how they want to do it, and when they want to do it. So that ultimately closes a gap for both of them. It doesn't matter who's better, who's worse. You felt their power. You felt what it's like when they grab you. You felt their level changes. Like a lot of that stuff is ghosted when you're fighting someone you've never faced before. You're like, I have to see this power for myself. I got to see their entries for myself. They've trained together. They've done repetitions together. They know what to expect. Now, the whole game plan now is who's going to draw up the better blueprint, who's going to kind of understand, and who is really paying attention in there to say, these are where her holes are. This is what she likes to do, and this is how I'm going to counter it. That's where this whole thing gets interesting. When you look at Miranda Maverick, I think she's got a lot more potential than she has shown. I think she's, she's got a low center of gravity. She's got good power. She does some nice things, a little too low volume for me on the feet. But when she does get you to the ground, she does know how to center her weight. She is kind of top heavy. She can be a bull. She's got that farmer's girl strength behind her. She does the whole pickle thing. And then when you look at Rhodes, you're looking at a totally different animal. You're looking at somebody that's more elegant. When you really watch the way she moves on the feet, she's got an elegance about her. She's very light in her feet. She moves in very, very unawkward, awkward patterns. She'll sting you as she's floating back. She'll sting you she's very, very in tune with her range and her understanding of what she's doing in there. So, when you look at the paths, where's the path here for Maverick? Now, Maverick, if she did make all these right reads and she was paying attention when they were, together all this time, she can draw a blueprint. But I think the blueprint would be she's got to get inside. She has to get her mitts on her. She has to take her down, and she has to be extremely top heavy on her and really not let her breathe. You're not going to win a striking match against Rose. She's too good at distance. She's too good with range. She's too good with movement. It's going to be pretty much like a bull chasing a blood cloth, and she will just literally piece her up from the outside and have her way, and maybe land a head kick, maybe knock her out. I don't know. But if you're going to stand with Rose and Miranda can't get her hands on her, I don't see how she wins a decision or finishes in her on the feet. I mean, it's just too low volume. She's not athletic enough. She's not as fast as her. She may have more power, if she clips her with a shot, but you still have to find her. I just don't think she's going to be able to find her. I think if she sells out and she drags this to the ground and she can get top control, even if it's like a minute and a half left in a round, she steals the round. Like, she's on the feet. She's getting kind of pieced up a little bit. It's a little close. Then she grounds it, gets a minute and a half control time, causes some damage. You just stole a round. And then at what point is it too late for Rose to come back? I got to go with the person. Every round starts on the feet. So every round she's going to have to try to get her paws on her and get her down. And I think it's a lot easier said than done. So I'm going to take Rose by decision.
Yeah, I'm curious what the Rose by decision line is. I think that's the most likely outcome here, and I'm sure it's going to be chalked, but I'm curious how much, because I can't find an angle.
Minus 175.
Yeah, that's pretty chalked, man. I mean, unless you want, from the way I price things, it's like, unless you want to have the bankroll to play that straight up, or you really want to be degenerate and put a decision leg in a parlay, which we could, folks, we could. And I wouldn't hate that one, by the way. But even Miranda Maverick, when I try to looking for angles on the dog here, I like southpaws. I've been a big fan of Miranda Maverick. But I ran into a lot of trouble picking her and backing her. Not that I backed her heavier a lot. I kind of pumped the brakes real fast after, I believe it was the Blanchfield fight, around that area where we start seeing her drop fights. Now, she did a positive thing where she changed camps, went to a bigger camp, training at Elevation, Elliot Marshall, the Elevation fight team. She's got rounds in with Rose. And here's where all things scare me off, is because they are former training partners. They weren't super tight, But Mike, when the former training partners get in there, it's like you know each other's reads, and it makes for some of the worst fights. And I feel like people have been catching on to that, but it's something I've screamed since the 90s in my sport karate days. Whenever I got matched up with someone from my gym, I was like, we know each other's. It's going to be the most boring. It's just going to be like the first 30 seconds of a Bruce Lee fight on repeat, where they're just circling each other, staring each other down. It's the worst. And that's made me a lot of money for the most part, because more often than not, you can gauge weird fights. You can save yourself money by staying away, or when you invest, maybe you invest in things like the overs. But again, as we said, minus 500, the books are well aware of that already, with it being a WMMA fight. As far as southpaw stats go here, folks, Rose is only 0-1, but it's weird because it's Manon Fiorot. And in that fight, if you remember, Rose literally breaks her hand within the first minute, and she has to fight her southpaw the whole time. And she actually makes a good account of herself, considering she had an injury, a severe injury. She had,
and she was grossly undersized in that fight.
Grossly undersized. And then having a fight, not just from a different stance, but like almost the whole fight from a different stance. Like, that's really tough. And she actually showed like she adapted well, which is a weird bro science I'm doing here, Mike. But that almost tells me that I'm like, if she was able to do pretty well against a talented, big, athletic southpaw like that on, not on short notice, but on a different stance. Imagine if she's got her full weapons and she's fully healthy. I think she can, I think she knows how to fight southpaws. Again, Miranda Maverick, the southpaw in question, was a training partner of hers. Another high-level training partner, UFC-level training partner of hers, Mike, JJ Aldridge, another southpaw. So, she trains under another, and she even closer with, because JJ Aldridge is another one that's, I don't know how tight, definitely not going to speculate there with Pat Barry, Predator Pat. But, I mean, they're under the same stable, so she's getting that southpaw look. So I got to imagine she knows what to do here. And I'm going to pick, Rose Namajunas. And I will say, like, one thing I was maybe looking at is maybe like a points handicap. When you want to get cheeky with the points handicap, you want to not just look for a live dog, but a dog that's not going to be finished, because that's generally how the points handicap will outright lose, right? But even that, I could see a 30-27 here, a shutout even. Miranda Maverick, since she moved camp, like I was saying, was a good move. However, since then, she's been more of a back foot fighter, and it's kind of went against her style. And I know interviews are interviews and talk is cheap, folks, but Rose herself even noted this, and Rose herself is feeling really comfortable in this fight, which you don't like to see if you want to fade Rose. You want to see Rose clammed up. You want to, you want weird Rose or something like that. It's like she seems really comfortable for this one, man. So I'm going to go Rose Namajunas. No real pick or play here that I'm strong about.
Sounds good.
All right, next fight, we got Edmund Shahbazyan, or if you're from, anywhere from West Chancellor, Pennsylvania, it's Edmund Shahbazyan there. Minus 185. Sorry. The guy is actually from Philly.
I went to college in Pennsylvania, so we would say, yeah, Shahbazyan.
Shahbazyan. I don't know. Yeah. No. Sorry, I just have like the wire accent, that Baltimore accent stuck in my head now. Andre Petroski actually is from that area. He fights out of Philly, a little south from that area of Philly. Plus 155 for Petroski. The over, it's a 1.5. They're expecting violence here with these two guys, which makes sense. They are kill or be killed fighters, folks, both of them. So the over 1.5, minus 135. Under 1.5 plus 105. Andre Petroski, so he's not an official southpaw. He's a switch stance fighter, but he does primarily fight at a southpaw. Before I throw it to you, Mike, I'll just say Edmund Shahbazyan, 0-2 technically against southpaws there. He lost to Gerald Mearshart, and then he lost to Derek Brunson, of course. So favorite to get it done here. Does he get it done here, Mike?
Yeah, it's an interesting fight, man, because this is the tale of two stories. You know what I mean? And on one side, you got Shahbazyan, who, like you said, is a absolute killer be killed fighter. And a perfect example of his exact style is his fight against Mearshart. This is a guy who and the crazy thing about Shahbazyan, because I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on him too much, I think he's super talented. Like, I think this guy has all the talent in the world to be a really good fighter, but he does not understand how to go from first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear. He goes from first gear to nitro. Like, there's no in between. And if you don't have the mindset and you don't have the understanding that maybe genetically you're not fully capable of, lasting a decently high pace in a fight, maybe you got to cut corners and you got to understand how to pace yourself. And he just has no idea. Has no idea how to pace himself. His team has no idea how to pace him. So he goes out there and he puts it on. And if he gets you out of there, which is a good probability because he's very good on the feet, he's got good sting, he's got good shot selections and stuff like that, then great. But if he does not get you out of there within a round and a half, all of a sudden you'll start seeing the tides change. And you saw with the Mearchart fight, when he fought Mearchart's perfect example. He almost finished him. He knocked him down 2-3 times. It looked like the fight was over. Then all of a sudden the switch hits and he's got no more gas and he's got no more answers. And Mearchart drags him to the ground and Mearchart does what he does and submits him. So it's like, and if you look at his overall body of work, it's like a lot of them are first and second, win or lose, first or second, because he kind of burns the candle on both ends way too quick. And when you look at Petroski, I agree with you in a sense in the beginning of his career that he was a killer, but not so much now because he actually has learned to pace himself. He understands that he didn't have the greatest chin, and he understands that his cardio wasn't the greatest because the more muscle you carry, the longer it takes your ATP recovery time, and obviously recoverability is everything. Even when you get knocked down, people think that it's your chin. It's not your chin. And if you get knocked down, that doesn't mean you're chinny. What means you're chinny is when you get knocked down, you don't get up. But if you get knocked down, you get up and you get your legs back, you're pretty resilient. So he's learned that. He's learned like, okay, like here's a holes in my game. So his last 3 fights, he's won by decision. He's gone to the cards. So this is what you guys like. Like, it's what do you trust? Do you trust Shahbazyan getting him out of there? Or do you trust Petroski weathering the storm and then all of a sudden getting his wrestling going and starting to drag him down and starting to make him wear his weight? And now it's becoming a boring fight where it's just control time and Shahbazyan's trying to get up, and maybe Petroski ends up finishing the fight on top because he just kind of not submits, but he just kind of, he's not defending himself at that point. So it's really a pick or choose. I don't think there's a right or wrong side, but if you're giving me that kind of fight, to me, that's more like pick 'em odds. So give me Petroski here. If you're giving me dog money at that situation, not to say I'm saying I'm running to the window, but if you're giving me, dog money at plus 155 on a guy who has a clear path to win from a round and a half on, I'll take that all day.
Yeah, money's trickling in on Petroski from the opener. Edmund opened not much higher at 2-1, which a little too high. I think even if you like Edmund, that's too high. So I don't hate that at all. It does feel like dog or pass from that perspective. I will say this, Petroski, you're right. He's the kind of guy where like I would generally pick him over Edmund. Like Edmund's a guy who usually I would try to fade because, if you can get past, early striking threats with suspect ground, those are guys I generally try to fade where I'm like, ooh, if I can get a guy who's durable enough to survive the storm, and GN3 is my moneymaker. So I was all over that spot, right? And by the way, Edmund, trains out of my gym. I share the cage with him, the big cage in this camp every Tuesdays when I was doing pads. He was in there with Eric and I'm not going to say what they're working on or anything like that or any of that stuff, but I like it. This is the first Southpaw matchup where he's at Extreme Couture for he's been at Extreme Couture. Now, well, actually, he might have been for the last one. Actually, with Gerald, might have been his first or second camp there. But again, I felt like that was a bad matchup for him. And even though bias aside, I still picked Gerald, right? So it's not just all bias here, folks. I will pick and even bet against guys who train out of my gym or whatever. However, I will say, my bias aside, the gym does have a good track record, not just of winners or this or that, but if you actually look at the fighters' improvements, they're actually making improvements. And Extreme Couture, one of the things you're going to get better at is a lot of, wall work, cage control. There's a lot of the emphasis done there, and there's a lot of experience in that facility for that. So I got to imagine that Edmund is absorbing a lot of these things for ground improvements. And even if I was like full-hearted, I want to fade Edmund, I still wouldn't know if I would want Petroski because maybe I pick him, but like as a bet, I want a guy who's going to like cash those round 2 or round 3 tickets, right? And to Mike's point, he's been much more of a decision guy lately, and he looks like he's going to gas. And that was the thing like, oh, Petroski's good at gas, he's going to gas. But he's one of those dudes, he's got that deceptive gas tank where he looks tired, but he still makes it work. He'll still dog it out. So he's not a guy that I can really count on to finish. Or to, maybe do enough damage. So he could actually, wrestle and tire Edmund out here. But if he doesn't finish him, it still maybe ends up a close fight. Now, I'm actually going to pick Edmund to go ahead and get the finish in rounds 1 or 2. knowing full well he could, he could fully get wrestle effed here, right? Which is why I'm not betting any money on Edmund. But as far as a pure pick goes, I'm going to pick Edmund here. This is a real curious wait and see fight for both guys. I think both guys are at a point of their career where they really got to start shitting or getting off the pot, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, like I said, this is a fight where I'll usually argue with everybody. Like, I take my hard stance, but this is a fight where I can't argue anybody's case. If you're going to pick Petroski, I see it. If you're going to pick Shahbazyan, I see it. So it's really, what do you like and what do you trust? And I trust Petroski a little bit more than I trust Shahbazyan. But like I said, there's no right or wrong answer in this one at all.
Yeah, and the totals are stay away too, because it's a 1.5, which is sketchy enough. And then you got a guy like Petroski who could easily extend it just as easily as he could implode. So it's like, what the? Yeah, so I don't like anything on that fight too much. So yeah.
There's a reason why you demand the best information, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. For over 35 years, Morgan & Morgan has been fighting for the people, just like you and I. They have over 100 offices and more than 1,000 lawyers nationwide. When you hire the wrong law firm, you may be beat before you start. All law firms are not the same. If you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. Their fee is free unless they win. For more information, go to forthepeople.com/doggerpass or dial #law, #529 from your cell phone. That's FOR thepeople.com/doggerpass or #law, #529 from your cell. This is a paid advertisement.
Next fight we got, I like this fight a lot, Mike. Real curious to hear your thoughts. We got Raoni Barcelos -195, Cody Garbrandt +165 for the former bantamweight champ. 2.5 is the total marking. We got over 2.5 rounds, -135, under 2.5 rounds, +105. So this one could go, volatile a bunch of different ways, whether we're talking about sides or totals. Do you have anything on either of those for us, Mike?
On the totals, I mean, it's so hard with Cody Garbrandt, bro. I mean, how do you trust an over with him, really, on either side? As far as the line, I think the line is probably where it should be. I mean, I do agree that Garbrandt should be the favorite. Barcelos is a guy who I've long said, did UFC fuck this guy? They shafted this guy. When this guy was on his run, they didn't want to give him anybody. They kept him on the undercards. They kept him on the prelims. They hid him until he got old. And then as he started getting older and he started losing, now all of a sudden we're Barcelos. But they ruined this guy's prime in a sense, because at one point in time, this guy was kind of like Miranda in a sense. I mean, if you really want to think about it, like he was just at high pace, high pressure, not like a Miranda, but he had that kind of style where you knew he was coming in aggressive and he was going to push a hard pace on you. And for whatever reason, the UFC didn't click with him. And here he is now. He's a little bit older and, his fights are going to be, give or take. He's not the same guy, but so you look at Cody, you're like, all right, he's a younger guy. He's been through wars. He's a lot faster. He's sharper. He's athletic. We've all seen that old fight, what he's capable of when he fought Dominic Cruz and he went into that flow state. But at the end of the day, you can be up 110 significant strikes to 0 on your way to a victory. But if you have a chin like this, that when you can literally blow it with a cup and you get knocked out, you are never a safe bet. So this is a fight where I could see it's going amazing for Cody until it's not anymore. Because the one thing about Cody Garbrandt is he is the type of fighter that, in the past, he needed to get it back. If you cursed at him, he had to curse back. If you smacked him, he had to smack you back. So the way to bait him into that kind of fight is you got to kind of poke and prod at him, and he's never going to hold his discipline. He's got a temper. He's going to come after you. That's how he lost against Dillashaw. That's how he loses against majority of the people he gets knocked out by. He goes into these firefights. I think now he almost went in reverse now. Now he's afraid of the firefight. Now he's kind of afraid of his chin. So he kind of fights like a little bit more tentative. He doesn't want to get stung. He knows this is a real thing. I really don't have a good chin. He's kind of accepted it at this point. So him getting into a firefight, unless he's buzzed, when he's buzzed, his instincts go and he's in. But for the most part, he's trying to fight very, very clean at this point. And that might be a bad game plan for someone like Hani, who's going to continuously push forward. He's going to be on him. He's going to be pressuring him. He's going to be in his face. If you're going to fight that way against Barcelos, you better be a sharpshooter. You better be able to put combinations together, be able to get out of the way. Now, Garbrandt's got good takedown defense. He always has. You know, he's been a very underrated wrestler in his career, but the last couple times I see him fight, win or lose, he looks like he's more educated, but it looks like they're taking that chaos out of his game that once made him good. And now you're fighting a guy with that chaos. You're fighting that guy that really doesn't care. He's going to push forward. He trusts his abilities. I don't know, man. Like I could see Garbrandt completely dialing and working this guy for 3 rounds and maybe even finishing him. But then I see a world where Hani just gets this done. So I'm going with Barcelos, dude.
I don't blame you, man. I don't blame you. Yeah, so Cody Garbrandt, like I haven't seen him working too much with Extreme Couture, and I don't know how much he's going in there for sparring. He's more with Dewey Black Cobra and kind of like working on the side with guys like, and I don't even see him too much in the Instagram, but it's amongst the same crew like Amir Albazi or Ode Osborne, who's a southpaw. And
another guy, Ode Osborne, great talent, great offensive talent, but he's just puts himself in bad spots.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you really don't know. And you look at, you know, Cody Garbrandt's win, Trevin Jones, who, you know, outside of that Mario Bautista upset, you know, fell out. Brian Kelleher was already was an overachiever, already on his way out, you know, and I like Brian Kelleher, but also a non-athlete, you know, right? And that's something that's important to note, because when we talk about age, that to me is also where athleticism comes in, right? Again, like Jose Aldo or Raoni Barcelos, these guys are older, but the reason why they're older and competitive at the top level and
they're still
lower
athletic.
weight classes is because it's that athleticism.
Look at Talbot. Look what he did to Talbot. I mean, we don't do MMA math here. We both agree on that. No MMA math.
Yes. Yep. No.
Okay, but if you put Peyton Talbot in a fight against Cody Garbrandt, who are you taking?
Oh, right now I'm going to take out Peyton Talbot for the knockout, probably.
That's what I'm saying. And like I said, we're not playing MMA math. I'm just saying, don't count this guy out because he's older, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, Talbot, even though he had much more reason to, both experience and skill level, to capitulate under that pressure, he didn't. Whereas I think Cody Garbrandt, conversely, again, not to do MMA math, but I feel like he would have capitulated in those rear mount positions, the multiple ones that Barcelos scored in that fight. You know what I'm saying? You know, I see that here. Barcelos inside the distance is one of my most favorite round robin pieces I'm targeting, because it's plus 4-1, both for the KO and sub, which means the odds makers have no idea how he's going to finish. And again, I've been burned by the, you know, I always say the Willem Dafoe and Spider-Man, choose Parker. Like, you don't want to choose the submission and the KO. Just take the inside the distance if you can, if you have a house that allows you to, much less allows you to round robin with it. And I'll tell you this, I've got my trigger on 2 potential 2-leggers tied to a total under, which we'll get to shortly. But the other chalk leg to that potentially, and you know, we'll see. Again, this could also be for the Dogger Pass parlay as well, right? Is Raoni Barcelos money line is one of those potential ones. Again, my worry here is that he could get sparked. Cody Garbrandt is no joke. Barcelos' chin is not perfect either. It may not be Garbrandt level, but it is touchable. You know, the blood in the elevator touchable. Wow, Dan, you're really going to reference a over 30-year-old film here for the MMA crowd? Stop it. But you guys get what I'm saying. They're both touchable, so let's not pretend they're not. That being said, we both feel pretty, you know, set with our Barcelos pick here. Let's move it on. Let's keep the party moving. Mansur Abdul-Malik, Terrence Malick, minus 800. Oh, wow, Dan, another reference for the audience. They probably won't get there. Cody Brundage, plus 500.
Bro, Cody Brundage looks like a fucking crackhead in that picture.
Yeah, he does. He
looks like a crackhead Freddie Prinze Jr.
He looks like, you know, he looks like, you know, any of your notable downtown areas. If you want to score some meth or something, he probably can give you the lowdown there. Cody Brundage, though, riding high off his win over Julian Marquez, really feeling himself. Mansur Abdul-Malik, he did have some adversity a little bit there, brief, but he showed he could get through it, which, you know, I value. I'm curious your thoughts on where Mansur Abdul-Malik is, and does he deserve to be this big of a favorite, Mike?
No, I don't think he deserves to be this big of a favorite, but he deserves to be the favorite. And I just think, like, what are they doing with Cody Brundage? Like, really, like, what the fuck are they doing with this guy? This is their, I don't even know. I don't think he cares, but this is the guy
Right.
that he's the meal. He's the meal. He's the guy that, get by Cody Brundage and we're good. Get another one on your resume. And Cody Brundage, listen, he's not terrible. But majority of his fights, look at the fights that he's won. Like, they're so bizarre. His resume is really fucking bizarre. Like, if you look at his wins and losses, like, they're very bizarre how he wins fights and how he gets out of fights and how his fights go down. They're just very bizarre. So he is a test to people because it's such just a bizarre situation when you're in there with him. But when you're looking at this, I mean, I'll make this very simple and you're looking at a guy who's superior athletic. I mean, his athleticism is far superior to Cody Brundage. He really should have no problem getting through him in this fight. Like, if this thing is a close fight, then we have to kind of pull the brakes on this kid a little bit and say, all right, well, let's see what's going on here, because this is a complete setup fight for Malik. Complete setup. This is get by Brundage. Let's go to the next fight. So I honestly think he has no problem. I think his athleticism, despite what he has, being as green as he is just going to carry him through this fight. I don't think Brundage is going to be able to do much with him. So give me Malik inside the distance, probably.
Yeah, same. I like Malik here. Obviously, there's bias. He's one of Eric Nixick's guys, but and who Eric Nixick's working with closely. Like, not everyone Extreme Couture automatically works with Eric Nixick, right? Like I said, and I'll do my best to tell you which guys are his personal stable, so to speak. And this guy's in the stable. This guy, he was on my prospect list when he only had 2 fights and no one knew when he was, and that's because Eric Nixick spotted him. This is before he came to the gym, so. He really scouted this guy out, and I really like how his wrestling goes to MMA, because he has the takedown defense that I like, where he's not getting too sticky with guys. Like, he really has the heavy sprawl and the separation. He pushes on the head, excellent down blocks, hardwired hips, but at the same time, he's not afraid to ground and pound. Even when guys are going for leg entanglements and tricky stuff, he's at the point where he's raw, and that's where you are going to get. If not caught, you're going to get, badly debased or really messed with. And man, we saw that with against Jiu-Jitsu black belt Dusko Todorovic, just, kind of spanking him down there, really, really that lost art of ground and pound, really looking to bring it back. He could be one of those guys, right? Obviously, he has the athletic intangibles, but you got the wrestling background. And again, now you got the striking under Eric Nixick, that corralling striking against the cage. We saw it come to life once he kind of realized, he's like, oh yeah, I'm classes above this Nick Klein guy. Like, he played it smart, of course, for a second, recovered after he got hit from a spinning elbow that probably would have knocked most men out, right? But it's like, wow, no, he showed a good chin. He showed good recoverability. Like, you could look at it as a black mark. Be like, oh, dude, short notice, nobody guy rocked him. At the same time, it's like, no, that was a trap spot. He got hit with the worst thing you could possibly hit with in that situation, and he bounced back exactly how you'd want him to. If you look at it, 2 of his 8 fights, Malik, have gone under 1.5 rounds. Brundage, if you look at just his last 12 fights from the UFC onward, pretty much, like, only 3 of that last 12 have not hit that under 1.5. So I felt like it was fairly priced at like the minus 180 range. Now it's getting ballooned to minus 200. So you might want to act quick if you want to, take a bite of that degenerate chalk. But again, this card's not it's not really giving you much of a choice with both the big chalk and the trappy chalk. Like last week, it was big chalk, but as akin to most pay-per-views, you get more notable, better sample sizes. You know what you're working with more, right? So it was more dependable chalk, and it proved to be so. This week, I could be wrong, folks. Of course I could be. That being said, I'm willing to bet, Mike, that not as much chalk comes through this week as last week. I'm willing to bet that, regardless of how we do. And so I'm just going to, but that being said, give me the big chalk here. I think he gets it done. And yeah, parlay piece is the under for me on this one.
All right. I got it. Yeah. I like it. Like I said, I think there's a lot of dog situations. I just don't think that's one of them.
Exactly. Yeah. It's going to force you to look into some weird spots for some props in total markets because the money lines are so funky. for this fight. Next fight we got here, opening up the main card. They're going with action, light heavyweight action. Alonzo Menifield plus 550, Oumar Sy minus 900, another giant favorite. I'm really curious to get your opinion on Mike. But first, the total market 1.5 rounds is set at over 1.5, minus 165, under 1.5 rounds, plus 135. So they're not necessarily predicting violence despite setting the total at a 1.5, which is interesting. That could be because the C is grappling, but what's your take on this one, Mike?
Yeah, it's interesting, this one, because like when Menifield first came out, we looked at him like, dude, look at this guy. He was like a specimen, right?
Yeah.
6 foot tall, 205. Then, you know, we see he's got his good spots and he's got his bad spots. You know what I mean? We look at him like he's kind of a freaky athlete, but he's kind of is, but he's kind of not. He's aesthetically freaky. It's a big difference. He's aesthetically freaky. He's got a freaky frame. He's got that, you know, and even now it's gotten smaller. He's kind of tapered down his muscle size. But when he first came in aesthetically, you're like, dude, this dude is fucking jacked. Then you look at him and you're like, all right, well, maybe he's not that athletic. He's not that fast. He's very flat-footed. He's very just like plodding forward. He kind of bulls you forward, bulls you into the cage. He tries to get what he wants. And, you know, big guy like that, sometimes he's going to get what he wants, you know. But when we look at, you know, C now, and you're like, wait, this guy's 6'4", 205. This guy's got an 83-inch reach, which is a 7-inch reach advantage over what Menifield got. He moves good. He's athletic. He's got a good ground game. He's got, you know, he's slick on the feet. Like, this is a different athletic, you know, type of ability. Like, you have the aesthetic athletics and you have the actual athlete. And I just think C is more of a pure athlete. You know what I mean? And that's no knock on Menifield. I'm not saying he's not a good athlete. Like, people are going, what do you mean he's not a good athlete? He's a good athlete. Guy's a very good athlete. But the thing that scares me about this fight is one punch can end it all. You know, one punch, C can be working him from pillar to post, and then the right place, run through the punches that knock you out are the punches you don't see coming. And Menifield can crack. If he does hit you with a shot and you don't see it coming, he will knock you out. So sometimes the better fighter doesn't always win. You know, and especially in the light heavyweight and the heavyweight situation. So I'm looking at this fight, I'm saying, yeah, all tales, you know, the tape and the film that I watched, everything's telling me like C really should win this fight, which is speed, agility, athleticism, and style alone. But then there's a situation. What if he walks onto a landmine? What if, Menifield reverses position and starts dropping some major, you know, ground and pound on him? What if these are big guys? These guys hit hard. So that's my fear. I'm picking C here, but it's not without, you know, reservation, and I wouldn't go near that line if you paid me, not with light heavyweights.
Oh, I feel like any play on these kind of fights is a degenerate play. I mean, you know, even with the reason
they're trying to take a couple points off their parlay, it's ridiculous. I mean, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. I mean, you'd have to look for something really, really sneaky. And what I'll say is this: so Oumar Sy is plus 140 for submission, not much of a difference. Plus 250 by TKO. So again, they're leaning toward the submission, but that, to me, that's close enough where the bookmakers, they don't know how he's going to finish, right? Still, so they're lining it close that way. And then you got like plus 2200s out there for Menifield by submission. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he has a weird, like, wicked, like, guillotine or whatever, because like. I think he's back to training with Fortis, but he broke off and he was training. Speaking of Pat Barry, he was training, with I don't know if it was, Predator Pat's open mat over there, giving him the ground skills. But remember, we saw like D1 Alonzo Menifield for a second, like he was working on his ground skills. He got that the face crank submission. It almost looked like a move that Michael Chandler taught us back in the Extreme Couture called the Missouri Hot Dog that he used to put guys out on the Mizzou mats with. But it was a really like funky submission. And again, C's a guy who's going to go for takedowns. So it's like, Menifield's going to, have a guillotine opportunity or two to crank a neck in there as well. And I think that more often than not, like I'll probably end up picking C, probably by submission. So I'm curious on like what fight ends by submission number would be, if it would be something stupid.
I normally would agree like with the submission thing, but you got to take into account that you're talking about a guy who's 4.5 inches taller. It's not as easy to get that to snatch that stuff, because guys that tall, they're not going really deep on your hips. I know I'm not. If at 6'2", I'm not fucking going deep. I'm getting waist level. I'm not really getting under your ass on a regular basis. You know what I mean? So,
sure. But I've seen C to your point, because I love that athleticism breakdown, by the way. That was perfect. And to your point, he does, a way a guy moves tells me so much. It's not just so much how a guy looks like Menifield, right? And you're right. C moves really well. And I've seen him kind of shoot lower than you'd expect for a 6'4" guy. And, he's still raw. He's still green. So maybe he gets tagged, right? And you start going for the bad shot. And that'll probably save him more often than not in this fight. But again, there's going to be those sweaty moments, right? Where if the landmine doesn't hit, it's going to be going off next to his foot at the very least in this fight, which is why minus 900 to both of us. Even though we're both picking C here, it sounds like. Obviously, it's a ridiculous price. I just wanted to throw something out there for the degenerates to chew on before I push on to the next fight here. So kicking off the prelims, I like these. I like this prelim lineup here. So we got the rebooked fight, right? Which, we don't have to spend a lot of time on. We got Rodolfo Bellato minus 425, roughly the same number for the rebooking, versus Paul Craig plus 310. Of course, the total's 1.5 rounds, over 1.5 minus 120, under 1.5 minus 110. They don't know if it's going to go over or under. Feels extra volatile now with the rebooking. Of course, Bellato, I believe, was the one with the health issues. Now they're rebooking it. Again, does this make you a little more sketched out, or do you still have basically the same feeling on this fight the same time around, Mike?
No, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing for me. I mean, he had herpes or something, right? Is that what it was? He had herpes? He had to back out from herpes?
Yeah. So if it's something like that, I'd maybe be less worried.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing with this fight for me is it's more on the Paul Craig side. It's like he has shown the ability to win fights that he's not supposed to win. He does, but then what happens is when you start buying into that and you start realizing, look, this is my path to win, you're not going to get it there no more. You're pulling Ryan Halls and you're laying on your back and you're actually waving guys in to come into your guard. You got to be a moron to do that. Like, you literally got to be a moron to, if Paul Craig's on his back and he's going like this, for you to say, okay, and jump into his guard. So we've seen him do that numerous times where he literally lays on his back like Ryan Hall, and he actually thinks that people are dumb enough to get into his guard. Bellato's a guy that if he does get into his guard, he'll be fine there. Like, I mean, I don't think anybody's completely safe against Paul Craig because he does have a great guard. But outside of that, like, if that's the game that you're going to play, it's kind of a stupid game to play. You got a guy who has horrible striking. Paul Craig's horrible striking to me is terrible. Very, very hittable. He's a deficiency. I mean, his defensive liability, he's a complete defensive liability. Why not just stand on the feet and trade with this guy? Even his wrestling isn't that good. It's really just when he gets onto the ground, there's always a Hail Mary chance that he's gonna latch something up because he's always looking for it. Unlocks his hips and he just goes for it. But I think Bellato's just the right side here. I just think that this is a situation where he's going to be able to put hands on him. He's a big enough guy to kind of control the wrestling. He can take it down if he really wants to take it down. And if it does go to the ground, he has enough in his back pocket to stay safe and kind of be weary of his limbs and understand where he is in the real estate of the cage. And can Paul Craig pull out a rabbit out of the hat? Of course he can. But, I'm not going to pick somebody who I need a rabbit out of the hat from.
Sure.
I'm going to go with Bellato.
Yeah, I won't add too much on that. I'll just say that Bellato, you could argue that you're getting a cheaper price on him because he's half the prices of the favorites we just broke down. But that obviously, it's way too much for me to want to put in a parlay because he is a guy who also will run into trouble early and need to build his way in. So in other words, this fight's going to be probably a sloppy mess to start with. And even though we're both on the Bellato side, you will be butt puckering. I'm just going to stick with what I had last time though, with the round robin and put Bellato round 2 and see if that was meant to be. These cancellations really, mess up my round robins lately, and so hopefully we're going to build off this win streak last week and pick up these round robin legs we were meant to hit. Let's go to the next fight. I like this one. Michael Chiesa minus 380, Court the Crusher Mcgee plus 290. Totals 2.5 rounds a set, over 2.5 rounds, minus 205, under 2.5 rounds, plus 157. So they're thinking this one goes over. I will say, I don't know. Have you been helping Court Mcgee with his regimen? I thought this guy was supposed to hate drugs and needles. What's going on there, Mike? What do you got for me on this fight?
Bro, guys are unbelievable. Like, I was just going to that was the first thing I was going to bring up, a testament to how this guy has overcome so many obstacles in his life. I mean, didn't he die for a couple minutes at one point?
Yeah, he had the Matt Brown treatment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's phenomenal. To come back from addiction and just be the well-spoken gentleman that he is. I love Court Mcgee. Like anytime he fights, I don't care if he fights, John Jones. It doesn't matter who he's fighting. I will always try to find a way to pick Court Mcgee because I respect him that much. I respect where he came from, how he's not cocky, how he's a very humble guy. He's a family guy. Like, how can you not like Court Mcgee? But then you got to be realistic at certain points. You got to say, okay, well, does he legitimately have a path to win this fight? When I initially saw the line, I'm like, Michael Chiesa, -3 and change. This is insane. But then it kind of made sense to me. And it's like, I'm not just going to pick a dog to pick a dog. Like, I'm not going to take a plus 250 or whatever just because. Like, I have to have a really stern rhyme and reason to do it. I'm not in the game to just throwing out flyers. And nor this is not a flyer. I'm not saying that Court Mcgee can't win this fight because he absolutely can. I don't think very highly of Michael Chiesa, but I do think very highly about his knowledge of he knows what he's good at. Michael Chiesa is not a guy who says, I'm a good wrestler and this is what got me here and I'm going to strike and I'm going to dance around the cage and I'm going to try to do all these things. Michael Chiesa knows, like, my path to victory is I'm going to live or die with my wrestling and my grappling. That's going to be an issue, I think, for Court Mcgee in this fight. If he stands toe-to-toe with Court Mcgee, give me Court Mcgee all day long. I'll probably end up live betting it if he doesn't go for a shot. But he's got to stop the shot. And with a 65% takedown defense, a little bit older, reflexes aren't there. Michael Chiesa kind of runs downhill with his wrestling. It's hard for me to believe that he's going to win more minutes than Michael Chiesa in this spot, unless he keeps on the feet, shucks a couple takedowns, maybe sparks him, and puts him out. That's great. But give me the guy I know is running downhill. Give me the guy. I don't want the guy running on his heels, running backwards. I want the guy who I know, like, he's going to run downhill with the wrestling. So I got to go with Michael Chiesa. I don't like the price, but it's kind of, in a way, the style, it's kind of justifiable to me.
Yeah, so I had similar thoughts, and when I came out of the tape study, I was like, I felt more bullish on Chiesa, but at the same time, there's this glaring thing where Mcgee. This is the best fights for Mcgee, a non-athlete, not that Chiesa's not athletic, but like an explosive athlete as far as striking goes.
He's not super athletic.
He's not, but I'm talking about like a more like the super athletic explosive strikers. Like that's who I really worry with Mcgee with, right? Especially at this point of his career. Because before it was like, it's tough. It's like when fighters get older, I'm always for the old guys, the dogs, looking for any excuse to pick them. I'm a big Mcgee fan as well, so I feel you on all that, right? But somebody said this, and it's so simple, but it's very truthful. Is when you get older, things start happening in fights that don't normally happen, right? And we saw that going all the way back to his Ponzinibbio fight, right, in like 2016, 2017, where people that were around back then knew that Mcgee's reputation was, you cannot stop this guy. You can't knock him out. You can't stop him. He's you could beat him, but he's going to keep coming. And, he's been rocked, but no, he's not going to get knocked out. And then he started getting knocked out, right? Okay, but you can't submit this guy, right? And I remember taking a flyer against a really raw Sean Brady, which sounds crazy, but Sean was still showing to tire at that point, and he still showed like he had the, between the striking being stiff, the body composition, like you speak about, Mike, right? Like I was like, oh, McGee's that perfect, like he's that deceptively rough debut, right? And even though Brady won that fight, you could actually, you go back and watch, you could see the path because he tired out in the third, even though he was still able to get him down and whatnot, right? And I'm like, okay, but Mcgee usually beats these guys, and he really hasn't faced a lot of strong, I'm going to take you down guys, A, much less I'm going to take you down, and I've got a killer back take game, B. He really hasn't faced those guys. He faced it in Claudio Silva, who was like this weird meme fighter who just is a really weird parallel, and he was not an athlete, did not have the takedown game, and never really came close, even though there were some brief moments of back exposure, right? Then he fights Ramiz Brahimaj. And this is, again, I'm going through all of Court Mcgee's career, and these are like kind of like the three most relevant and closest stylistic analogs, right? And Brahimaj I was bullish on. I think I got Court Mcgee there at plus 105, right? Like it was a real close pick 'em line. I'm like, everyone's fading the old guy good, and it was in the small cage of the apex. And Brahimaj is shown to tire if he can't get that, back take, even though he's shown that he's a good back take guy and can wrestle. But even now, and it wasn't that now version, it was a more raw, younger version. But even now, I wouldn't match him up to the same level as Chiesa on either of those two levels, right? So as experienced as Mcgee is, he really hasn't faced this matchup. As far as southpaws go, he is 4-3, so technically a winning record. It actually could be a little more. Some of those were close fights. But he gets pieced up a lot by southpaws too, as well on the feet. He doesn't really do too well in those matchups, right? So it's tough. So I got Chiesa here with the under, chalked up right over here, folks, and it's at a -102. I'm really tempted. I don't know if I want to pull the trigger on Chiesa in the under or Barcelos in the under, or maybe I'm wrong on both. That under doesn't hit, and I should have just done Barcelos and Chiesa for an even less sexier number. But that's what I'm working with right now, Mike. That's what I'm thinking about, because I don't know if he can finish Court. I think maybe he can. Court's had bad neck issues. Maybe he returns the favor, karmatic favor. He cranked Means the last time. Now he gets cranked by Chiesa. That could happen, but this could also go to decision with, Chiesa controlling Mcgee.
Yeah, I lean a little bit more towards decision. I just think Court is so damn tough,
Yes.
But I see a world. Listen, I don't care how tough you are. There is a world. You get that body triangle locked up on you with 2 minutes left in a round, and you're fishing and you're hand fighting, and it slips in. And I don't care how tough you are. You're either going out or you're tapping. So toughness means nothing when it comes to a submission. Toughness means something when you're sitting there or you don't tap out and you go to sleep, but you're still going to sleep and you're still losing. So Court McGee's tough. He's not going to quit. But the fact of the matter is, if he slips something under his chin, it's over. Like it's over. So I can go both ways on. I'm leaning towards decision, on this one, but I could absolutely see a submission as well.
And before we knock out the rest of these in quick order, I will just say, if Court, is able to shut him down and win, like I wouldn't be surprised there either.
No.
I will say this: I'll probably pull the trigger here on the parlay. Keep it locked at Dan Tom MMA on Substack, where I post. Also at Dan Tom MMA on Twitter if you want to follow my tracking links and stuff there as well. So you guys, I'll tell you where I end up on it. You guys will be able to follow it. But I will say, if I don't parlay it, I'm definitely going to put Chiesa in the round robin by sub, baby. So I just wanted to say that before we move on to the next fight. Which is, wow, all right. We got Malcolm Wellmaker -2,500. Again, -425. That's baby odds compared to the cards odds on this card. Wellmaker -2,500 over short notice, 1 week notice. Kris Moutinho +900. Total over 2.5 +290. Under 2.5 rounds -435. Not much to say about this fight. I'm gonna pick Wellmaker. But do you have anything you want to say on this one, Mike? This short notice little impromptu.
No, I mean, not really much. All I will do is say to you guys this: you will hear me preaching a lot. Sorry, guys, you will hear me preaching a lot about the business sometimes, and this is the business right here. This is, you got to sometimes put yourself at the round table with Dana White and Hunter Campbell and these guys and say, what do we get out of Kris Moutinho beating a prospect like Wellmaker? What do we get out of this? The answer is zero. They lose. The UFC loses if Moutinho wins this fight. They don't want to put him against somebody who could harm him right now. They got a good prospect who's a well-spoken kid, a good-looking kid, a marketable kid. They're not trying to harm him. So what they do, they bring a guy in the Moutinho in who, hey, yeah, he got his ass kicked by O'Malley, but he lasted. Let's bring him in. Let him be a human punching bag. Let this kid be a highlight. Now, you look at his record when he went on to this off the scene and he put his hair back to normal. There's no more green hair, and he's talking about how he's in a better place. And his, he was sounding like in his interview. I got to be honest, we sounded like in his interview he was borderline suicidal at one point. And kudos for him for saying he's in the best place he's ever was in his life, and that's a really good place to be. But at the end of the day, you still need the skills to back it up. And the one thing about him is he's just like, he really doesn't have a good genetic code when it comes to athleticism and moving and just fighting. He's there. He's tough. He brings that street style with him, and he's going to be there. He's going to be there until he can't be there anymore. But to say he's going to be Wellmaker in 15 minutes, you're giving is a really long stretch. Now, would I ever lay -2,500 on anybody? No, I wouldn't lay it on anybody. This is Wellmaker's fight to win. I can't even say or lose. The only thing I will say about this is that the kid has shown insane durability. In some of his films, like it depends, like when he's clocked in, he's clocked in. So the over 2.5 at +2, at +2 and change, like that's something I was like, I was like, that could be an interesting play. Like that could be in play, but I still think Wellmaker gets it done probably inside the distance. So I don't know if I'm going to get there, but it is something to think about. It is really something to think about, that over 2.5 rounds.
So you said inside the distance. I would say by KO, not just because Moutinho, 4 of his 6 stoppage losses.
By KO. By KO. Yeah.
But also shout out to my guy Dan at Best Fight Picks. He interviewed Wellmaker right before this news dropped, and someone asked. I should shout out to whoever asked the question because it was a really smart question. They phrased it in a way I can't repeat, but it was the perfect way for a degenerate gambler if you want to, to avoid the choose. Parker, is he going to go for a sub or a knockout? And they asked Wellmaker, I'm like, you got your opponent hurt. You're in full mount. What do? Do you keep striking or do you look for a submission? And Wellmaker's like, oh, I keep striking no matter what the position is. And I was like, that is such a valuable question for us degenerate prop hunters like myself, by the way. Now, obviously, you're not getting great numbers on it as you wouldn't get for a guy minus 2,500. It opened at minus 200 for the knockout prop. But I will say there is one time where I would, again, kind of like the Rose decision, I almost feel better about Wellmaker minus 200, minus 230 knockout prop. If I had a gun in my head between that and a minus 175 Rose decision, as crazy as that sounds, I think they're both very liable to hit, by the way. I don't think it's very much of a difference, but for what it's worth. But I'm just saying, like, the card's forcing your hand. You could do worse at, tying some degenerate action into a favorite anchor. That's a KO prop here.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, next fight. Let's get to these pretty fast. We got Cody Durden plus 160. Jose Ochoa minus 190. Biggest age gap on the card by 10 years in favor of Ochoa, the shootbox Diego Lima fighter. Totals are set at 2.5 rounds with the over 2.5 rounds plus 115. Under 2.5 rounds minus 115, which means they're slightly leaning toward violence. Where are you leaning toward this one, Mike?
This is tough for me, bro, because, the one thing about Cody Durden I love about him so much is the guy's a dog, right? The guy is, that he's going in there, he's fighting for your money. But like you just said, anybody coming out of the Shooto box camp, you have to be a dog. They don't take anything else. Like you have to have that Vanderlei Silva kind of street fighter tap, but you got to have that dog in you to be a part of that camp. So now you got two dogs coming in. You got one guy who's a lot younger, but one guy who has a lot more experience in being in these dog fights. So it's like, it's really, really hard for me. I just keep going back to when you look at both of these guys, they're very similar. Both of them southpaws, both of them 6-7 inch reach. I just keep going back to when you look at Cody Durden and you look at, we look at him as good as he is, because he is really good, but little by little, it's chipping away. A loss, a win, a loss. He loses here. That's 4 of his last 5. You're put in a very difficult situation at this point. Not the UFC is going to cut him, but the fact of the matter is that like you're in those waters now. You're swimming around the bay. You're not in the ocean no more. You're kind of swimming around the bay where they might get ready to dock you. I think this is too pivotal of a fight for him. And I think that he's actually going to pull this off. I think Durden's going to have a little bit more dog in him. He's going to have a little bit more tricks under his sleeve. I think that he's going to come in very ultra prepared for this fight. I think it's going to be a very good fight, a very close fight, a fight that he's going to really have to, earn it. He's going to have to earn this win. But if you're giving me him at plus money in a situation, the situation that he's in, I like his chances here. I just hope that he leans on his wrestling a little bit more, than per usual. Like a couple times he's fought recently, like he kind of gets stuck on the feet. And although his boxing did get a lot better, Cody Durden is best when he's pushing that pace, where he's taking you down, where he's utilizing his wrestling, where he's in your face and he's not allowing you to breathe. That's where he's the best. And you could be a good grappler and you can have a good submission game, but when you got a really good wrestler on top of you with good weight distribution, it's hard to unlock your hips. It's hard to, sweep him off you, to get your butterfly guard and stuff like that. So position before submission, like let him push the pace. If he does that, I think he's got a really good chance of winning Durden.
Yeah, I always feel like Durden's a live dog, man. And like when I don't pull the trigger on him, I regret it. And when I do, I regret it. It feels like. And I didn't even pull the trigger on him in his last fight, even though I picked him, which sounds crazy because I'm a huge Joshua Van fan. And it was more just like I was hoping I was wrong. It just felt like a trap fight because Van, he fights so often and can fight at, close margins and this and that and give up, takedowns. I was like, oh, maybe he, it's like the Patchy Mix Bautista where he's going to lose that first round for sure. And now we just need Durden to win one round. Basically, it's a 1-round fight, right? But you saw the gas tank kind of go, and Van is another level. And so even if Ochoa is good, I don't think he's going to be that good, at least yet. Rare southpaw from the Diego Lima camp, of course, and he doesn't really grapple as much either. Submissions, despite wanting to grapple, submissions ironically have kind of been the kryptonite for Cody Durden, and that's not really Ochoa's game. He only he went 3 rounds with Lonnie Kavanaugh last fight, who is another uber prospect who I'm very high on. So I didn't expect him to get too much done or be able to take a guy like that down very, comfortably. But he only attempted one takedown. So
he didn't look bad in that fight though. He
didn't.
He had a good representation of himself.
No, but as far as like if you're looking for certain things that have worked on Durden before, and does this guy have it in his game, and it becomes a little bit more narrow when you look at it from that perspective. So I want to look into this one a little more because I don't have a lot of dogs, and Durden is one I'm leaning toward. Whether I pick him or not, this does definitely feel like a dog or pass spot, regardless of which side I land on. But I am leaning. Didn't set this one. I'm not set on, folks.
Look at this Durden. Fucking guy. Look at this fucking guy, bro, playing both sides of the ball over here.
I know. I got to do it on this one. Some of these fights. This was one of them where I didn't get to run through my my complete comb like I normally do. But that Durden number is barking at me. But the fact that it's growing in his direction, I'm also I haven't been in a rush to get to this fight because I know that number it's only going to get better if anything. If you like Durden. So next fight, we'll get to the rest of these pretty fast. Ricky Simon, Ricky Simon. He was Ricky Simon for a bit. And he got that knockout. Now he's Ricky Simon, minus 525 against Cameron Smotherman, stepping in on a week short notice, plus 400 for Smotherman. Total set for 2.5 rounds, over 2.5, minus 101, under 2.5, minus 129. Not too fine because they don't know where it's going to go. Like I said, they're just putting matchups just so they can fill their cards here. And even though they try to do a better job, again, people get mad at me when I bring it up. It's the relentless UFC schedule, folks. It has a cost, and its cost are fights that whether you can't bet on because it's another stupid over north of minus 5-1 number, or it's because it's like two good guys that are, a short notice fight. So you're flipping a coin in the air. Obviously I'm sided toward Ricky Simon, who was originally set for this fight, but what do you got here, Mike?
Yeah, this is interesting, this fight, right? Because Ricky Simon is a guy who, let's face it. Back in the day with Marab, when he put him in that situation, and Marab was kicking like he was fucking swimming, and that was a whole controversial thing. But at one time, Ricky Simon was just like a pacemaker, dude. He literally would just be on you like white, like fucking flies on shit. And that's just the way he fought. Since then, it's kind of, I don't know if he's tapered down a little bit, but like anything else, when you have the best of the best in your corners and you got the elite guys, the elite trainers and the elite camps that are doing the homework, putting pencil to paper, they figure you out. Then you got to do something after that. You got to kind of find a detour, and if you look at his record, listen, he's losing to all. None of these are bad fighters. He's losing to Song Yadong, Mario Batista, these guys like that. But this is a fight that he should win. Like a Cameron Smotherman, as good as he is, as athletic, as young as he is, he's still very, very green. And this is a fight that he should be able to kind of big brother him a little bit in a sense. Like he really, really should. If he goes back to kind of his grassroots, if he's going to stand and, strike with the younger kid and look for speed, and you're asking for trouble. But if you're a real true veteran, what got you to the dance, you could put it on this kid to make him say, like, how am I going to get out of this situation? Like, I got to figure this out. This guy's all over me at this point. And I got to get out of this situation. And if he does that to Smotherman, I think he's going to run out of options really, really quick. So I do like Simone here.
Yep. Who is all over him? Mike's got his hose all over him, man. That phone of yours. They just keep calling you. They just keep calling you.
They just call. They fucking bring the hose out.
All right. On that note, let's go to Phil Rowe plus 110, Ange Lusa minus 130. So this fight, it feels like one of the more playable fights just because of the price alone, right?
Yeah.
But then when you go and look at these fighters, especially I don't know about you, but Rowe, I'm just like done with the false hope of the plus number. Ooh, Phil Rowe plus number. He's got this potential. Trains with good guys. Got some length. He got some sneaky submissions. Maybe gets a little more in the boxing, a little more heavier with his jab. Who knows? I am tired of spinning tails and believing in it. So I'm going to be picking Ange Lusa here because he is the more consistent fighter. But again, I am not the stature and the style. I feel like Ange Lusa could run into some serious shit here as well. What do you got, Mike?
Yeah, I like Rowe here, to believe it or not.
Okay, all right.
But I was never like you, like where I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, Philip Rowe, like, you know what I mean? But I do respect the guy. The guy's active in numerous disciplines. Like he is an active guy, and he does listen, face it, he's got the physical attributes. He's gonna have a 6-inch reach advantage, 6'3" against 5'10". Andre Lusa needs to get inside on people. That's why he fights. That's what makes him good, right? Like he kind of charges the pocket, he grinds against the cage, he uses his his size and his strength to kind of like play bully ball with you in there. But you still got to get through that range. You still got to get through that range. And when you got long limbs like Phil Rowe, where he can kind of stab you from the outside, move, they're going to be in the bigger cage. You got to remember that too. So that he's not going to be able to close them down that easy. And not to mention that if you're going to take shots and you're going to continue to crash the pocket, like you said, he's taller. He does have those long limbs, and it's easier to wrap up the neck when you're that much taller than somebody and you have those long limbs. So I just think there's more danger zones here in the favor of Phil Rowe than I do Andre Lusa. I think Andre Lusa's got to completely close him down and take the range away, which is very possible. It's Phil Rowe. It's not like he's some fucking, stallion. But at the end of the day, it's still something you have to do. It's still another puzzle piece you have to put together. Well, Phil Rowe pretty much just has to stay on his bike. He literally has to stay on his bike and, kind of snipe him at range. And when he does crash the pocket, you got to make him pay for it. And I'm not saying with a strike. Wrap up the neck and let it go. Show him signs that you're not afraid to kind of, your neck was just exposed. Like, watch your neck. Because then what that'll do, it'll make Andre Lusa a little bit more cautious on his entries. And when you're too cautious on your entries and you think too much and hesitate, you make fucking mistakes. So I think this is a close fight. I think it's fine the way it's lined. I wouldn't mind if Rowe was the favorite. I wouldn't mind if Lusa was the favorite. But give me the guy with the more physical attributes. And for me, the more paths to victory, Phil Rowe.
Yeah, I would like this better for Rowe if it was in the smaller octagon. I also would like the potential of him finding a finish better in the smaller octagon. I know Lusa has never been finished, and sure, that could be part of the reason why I'm picking him. Although I will say, I did pick Bryan Battle to finish him, and I thought Bryan Battle was on his way to finishing him before
that was fucked up.
I will say that. So I'm leaning toward Lusa right now, but here's the one thing that'll switch me to Rowe because I need dogs here, right? Even if I don't play him. I'm going to go back and look at the last couple fights for one thing in particular because I can't remember it offhand. I want to look at how many head kicks he's thrown because that was a big thing. Lusa, he does this. He fights like an outfighter, which can be dangerous when you're a shorter guy, and he'll do these naked kind of step shifts that are lateral, but he'll step into like the power side of a kick, man. And that's what I was seeing with the battle fight before it. It was happening, and he was getting rocked even when he was blocking him, kind of a deal. And against a big, tall guy like that throwing kicks, I think it's going to be a really good idea for Phil Rowe. So that's what I want to look at to see if I sway my pick. But right now I'm leaning toward Lusa.
Okay.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Bless your soul. Rock and roll.
All right. Let's go to the last fight and let's get this knocked out. Jamey-Lyn Horth, minus 575. Vanessa Demopoulos, plus 390 for the dancer, minus 410 for the over 2.5 rounds, under 2.5 plus 290. So again, from the overs to the money lines, they are fortifying the walls here for your parlay pieces. Mike, what do you got for this fight?
Yeah, listen, to me, this kind of came at first when I saw when you initially see the odds, you're like, what the hell's going on? But then once you rip into it, it's like it kind of makes sense. I mean, Vanessa Demopoulos, the one thing about her is she has no issues with going to the ground because she does have a very slippery, ground game off her back. But that only works with certain people. When you get a girl like Jamey-Lyn Horth, who's very, very top heavy, she knows that she's not the quickest thing in the shed. She knows she's not the sharpest tool either when it comes to as far as like just creating these situations. She's kind of lumbering, right? She'll get on top of you. She's violent. She'll have good weight distribution. And that's a problem for Demopoulos because once you lock your hips down on her and I mean, she can't unlock her hips and kind of swivel into position. She doesn't really look to get up. You know what I mean? So her striking is a liability. I just think that the way she fights, not that she's not a better fighter, not that she's a better athlete or anything like that. I just think this style matchup just favors Horth like so much more. I think that she's going to have the ability to do so many more things where she's not going to have to really create them. She's going to just have to kind of eat the clock a little bit, where Demopoulos is going to have to create situations in this fight to kind of get off. So I like Horth here. I mean, I never go near that price tag, but I just think that when you look at the matchup of this fight, it really does favor Horth here.
Yeah, shout out to the CF dot model because I believe that's in play here, and I may actually take Demopoulos and Tout Master because you get more points for a dog in that pick contest. I know a lot of our listeners are in that same Tout Master pool. Shout out to you guys. But yeah, as far as an official pick, I'm definitely leaning toward Horth. Her numbers, it's funny, like you watch her fights and you look at her stats. It's another reason why I'm not like a huge stat guy, or if I like stats, I'll go fish out my own stats, like rematch stats, southpaw stats, etc. But like I feel like she puts out more offense than what she's getting credit for. And at the very least, to say that Horth, again, giving her division, the talent pool, the women's divisions and whatnot, like she is one of the more quietly consistent fighters in there. And she'll go for a takedown and whatnot. You're like, oh, maybe that'll get her in trouble. But I don't think, to your point, I think that Demavos is really going to have to create a lot of opportunities just to have a chance. But Demopoulos, I'll take flyers on as a big dog, especially if it's in the smaller octagon. That's going to encourage the kind of chances that she needs. But this is also the bigger octagon that will allow Horth to maybe kill time and, put out some more, consistent scoring volume over Vanessa. So yeah, I'm going to be leaning toward Horth here, but I'll probably pick Demopoulos and Tout Master, for the points. This is I'm playing from behind there, but this is not a fight where I don't think you should feel like too bullish either way.
Okay. Now you said for the parlay, you're going Usman and who?
Okay, so we're going to be doing the Dogger Pass parlay. So thank you guys for the YouTube comments, by the way. We are interacting with those, trying to be better about that. And they suggested the 4-legger. So Mike's going to pick a favorite in a dog line. I'm going to pick a favorite in a dog line. It could be a total and a prop, by the way, but it's got to be a 1+, 1-. Yeah, I'll go Usman as a dog if you're okay with that. We're consensus on that one. Yeah. And I'm also going to go with Barcelos for the favorite line. So I am going to go money lines. I'm going to go a little vanilla there.
All right, so you got plus 389 with those two. That's what we're sitting at now. And for me, I'm going to go with jeez. You're really leaving me fucking shit over here. I'm going to do
Rose decision, Wellmaker knockout, that under 1.5 with the Malik.
I almost want to take Chiesa.
I mean, I'm consensus on that for a favorite in parlay.
Yeah, so I'll go Chiesa at a plus. That'll make it plus 530, and then my dog is going to be. I'm going to take. I know you're not consensus on that though. Actually. Yeah, you're not consensus on that. You're not we didn't. You didn't pick. You didn't pick. Case. I mean, what is it called?
Durden.
No. Yeah. Did you pick Durden?
Yeah, I'm leaning toward Durden as a dog pick.
What about? Did you pick? Who'd you pick for the Garbrandt? The Shahbazyan fight. You took Shahbazyan, right?
Yeah. I mean, we can go Durden. That's dogger pass.
Let's go Durden. Let's go Durden. So that's so that leaves us at plus 1502.
That's a nice number. I was gonna say we should try to aim for at least plus what is it, plus 1,000 or plus 10 to 1, however that.
Yeah,
you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, so we got all right. So
that's way more, but that's good.
4-game parlay this week, 4-teamer, 4-fighter, whatever. It's Kamaru Usman, Hani Barcelos, Michael Chiesa, and Cody Durden. That's paying over plus 1,500, boys and girls.
Awesome. Awesome. I like that. And I'm let's just go down the line real quick before we get out of here. What we're kind of a consensus on. We both like Usman as a dog. We're both picking Rose Namajunas. You got Petroski, I got Shahbazyan, but neither of us are bullish, admittedly, on that one, nor should we. We both like Barcelos. We both like Malik. We both like C, but again, we put the caveats with the ones that have stupid lines attached, obviously. We both like Bellato. We both like Chiesa, obviously. That's in the parlay. We obviously like Wellmaker. He's the biggest favorite on the card. Not that should mean anything. We're both think it's dog or pass / liking Durden. We threw him in the parlay there. We both like Simon Vato. I'm still undecided. I can be flipped, but you like Ro, and I'm on the fence on the Lusa one. I want to go back and see if Ro throws enough head kicks for my liking, because that's the opening I see. And we both like Horst over Demopoulos, even though I'm going to throw Demopoulos in the old Tout Master. If you missed it, I'll be taking Usman straight up for a unit plus 230. And I got the under in that play, under 4.5 rounds, minus 130 for 1.3 units. Hopefully one of those hit. If not, both would be a great day. And I'm going to be looking at Barcelos inside the distance, probably straight up. I think I'm going to pull the trigger on my Chiesa parlay parlayed with the under 1.5 rounds and Malik and Brundage. That's like minus 102. Maybe I'll put a little north of 1.5 units on there. Maybe I'll play inside the distance straight up for Barcelos. If not, I'm definitely going to have Barcelos in my round robin, along with some other things like possibly we'll see, maybe something on Durden since he's a dog there. But stay tuned for that. Mike, where can they find you, your picks, anything you want to plug on the way out of here?
Yeah, so if you guys, we do all DraftKings. I mean, I just actually redid the entire DraftKings section. I mean, it was like 12, 13 pages last week. I mean, everything you need from a DraftKings perspective, from floors to ceilings. I got Fight Brain technology on there. I do a live stream a couple hours before the fight, post weigh-in audio breakdowns, breakdowns for every fighter, audio on the site, and also my wagering blueprint, which I usually do right after weigh-ins. That's very important to me to see the weigh-ins, unless I see lines moving and I got to grab it quick. So go to the madlabmma.com. We got all different tiers of memberships. You can go for the week just to check us out. You can go for the month. You can go for the year. We got a great Discord, great community, a lot of sharp guys in there doing all sports. So definitely come check us out.
Awesome. You can find me at all social platforms at Dan Tom MMA. The artist formerly known as Twitter is where I'm most active, and I post my fun picks and plays movie GIF. Usually it was Sopranos last week because we're in Newark, New Jersey. Theme over there on Twitter. I'll post it on fight day, the day before, or even earlier than that. I have my picks and plays as I go over on my Substack, which you subscribe for free at Dan Tom MMA. MMAjunkie.com has all my breakdowns every week on the main card, in-depths on the main event fights and co-main event for pay-per-views, Southpaw reports for pay-per-views on Home of Fight. But if not, I'll get you those Southpaw stats both here on this podcast as well as my Substack. I want to send a special shout out. It's so beautiful. It's so grateful to have a producer, especially an awesome one like Jared. Although he left his cam on the other day and he was loading some trash bags that looked like they were really big. One of them was moving and he had to beat it with a stick. He was loading them into his trunk. I don't know what that was about, but
Did
Jared's
he really?
a great guy. No, I'm kidding. We're just, I went from not shouting out Jared to now giving him an alter ego that he's a serial killer now. But no, I'm just kidding. Jared, shout out to you, brother. And Dayton in the back, by the way. Thank you very much for the support today, gentlemen. All right, guys. I've been Dan. This is Mike. We're going to get out of here. Good luck on your picks and plays. And, well, always protect your neck.